The stage lights burned bright over a packed downtown auditorium, their heat matched only by the tension in the air. In the center of the stage stood Arnold Schwarzenegger, 76 years old, former governor of California, world-famous action hero, bodybuilding legend, businessman, and for millions, a walking embodiment of the American dream. The deep, familiar rumble of his Austrian-accented voice rolled across the room like a drumbeat. He looked every bit the movie titan, broad shoulders, sharp suit, and the unshakable confidence of a man who had spent decades commanding rooms like this. More than 2,000 people filled the hall. The aisles were jammed, the balcony overflowing, and even the lobby screens had drawn hundreds who couldn't get inside. On stage, a few feet away, sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, 42 years old, razor-sharp in a fitted navy suit, her posture perfect, her gaze locked onto Arnold with the precision of a trial attorney who knows exactly where she's leading a witness. Every subtle movement, the tilt of her head, the stillness of her hands, radiated an unspoken readiness. This wasn't supposed to be a fight. The event was billed as a conversation on the American success story, an exchange between two public figures from wildly different worlds. For Arnold's team, it was the perfect setting to remind the public of his favorite narrative. The immigrant who came to America with almost nothing, and through grit, discipline, and relentless ambition, became one of the most recognizable figures on Earth. But within the first few minutes, it was clear this conversation was about to become something else entirely. Arnold leaned forward into the microphone, his voice booming with the confidence of a man used to owning the room. "You know, Congresswoman, I came to this country with just $7 in my pocket. No safety net. No family here. No promises. I worked harder than anyone else, I stayed disciplined when others gave up, and I made my dream a reality. That's what America is about, not complaining about the system, but pushing yourself beyond your limits." There were cheers from the audience. Some people clapped in agreement, nodding at the familiar rags to riches message. Arnold didn't stop there. "And now I look at Washington, I look at Congress, and I see too many people who have never built anything, never taken a risk with their own money, never created jobs. And yet they think they can tell the rest of us how to live. So I have to ask you, Congresswoman Crockett." He turned to face her fully, his voice low but cutting. "What have you actually built?" The room went still. Even the air felt heavy. Jasmine didn't blink. She leaned slightly toward her microphone, her voice calm but steady. "Governor Schwarzenegger, I've built something you can't buy with Hollywood money or business deals: trust. Trust with the people I represent. Trust with communities that have been ignored for generations." Arnold gave a short, humorless laugh. "Trust doesn't create jobs. Trust doesn't build hospitals. Trust doesn't pay for schools. Results do. And I have results." He rose from his chair in one fluid motion, towering over the stage. "I govern the fifth largest economy in the world. I made tough calls. I didn't just talk about the problems, I solved them." The crowd split, half cheering, half sitting in tense silence, unsure of where this was headed. Jasmine stayed seated. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You're right, Governor. Results matter. So let's talk about results." Arnold's smile faltered slightly. "You made tough decisions," Jasmine said. "But did you ever think about the people those decisions hurt? Did you ever have to choose between paying for your child's asthma medicine or keeping the lights on? Did you ever work 3 jobs just to make rent? Did you ever have to explain to your kids why they couldn't have shoes for school?" Arnold's expression tightened. "I understand struggle. But the answer isn't handouts. The answer is to work harder. Dream bigger. Never give up." Jasmine's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice slowing just enough for each word to land. "When you came to America with $7, did you worry about being pulled over and not making it home alive because of the color of your skin? Did casting directors tell you looked too threatening for a leading role? Did bankers treat you like a criminal when you applied for a loan? Did you have to teach your children how to keep their hands visible at all times so they wouldn't be mistaken for a threat?" A ripple of gasps swept through the crowd. "You and I both believe in hard work," she continued. "But we've been playing by completely different rules. You've never had to live in a world that doubts you before you've even opened your mouth. Her voice sharpened again. What have I built? I've built a career in a justice system not built for people like me. I've built coalitions that stretch across communities others have written off as hopeless. I've built bridges between worlds you don't even know exist. And I've done it without the luxury of starting from a place where the benefit of the doubt is given to me automatically. Arnold shifted in his seat, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face, something the public wasn't used to seeing from him. Jasmine leaned forward one final inch. Governor, you came to America and became the Terminator. I came into this world already having to terminate the assumption that I didn't belong here. The silence that followed was deafening. Arnold's face, normally a mask of confidence, now carried the unmistakable look of someone who had just been caught off guard by a truth they hadn't prepared for. Within minutes of the event ending, the clip hit social media and detonated. Hashtags like hashtag Terminator terminated, hashtag Jasmine knockout, and hashtag different rules were trending worldwide. Memes, remixes, and side-by-side reaction videos flooded TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. But this wasn't just internet spectacle. The exchange forced a real conversation. Families at dinner tables, teachers in classrooms, colleagues in break rooms. Everyone was suddenly talking about privilege, opportunity, and how the American dream is not the same for everyone. A week later, Arnold broke his public silence in a statement that stunned many. I'm proud of my story, but Congresswoman Crockett is right. I never had to face certain fears that millions of Americans live with every day. That doesn't make my journey less valid, but it does mean I have more to understand. And I intend to learn. He announced a partnership with several civil rights organizations to listen, learn, and use his platform to address systemic barriers. For a man who built his career on being the toughest in the room, it was a rare and human moment of humility. Political commentators, debate coaches, and media analysts began dissecting the confrontation as a masterclass in reframing a narrative. Jasmine hadn't dismissed Arnold's accomplishments, she had expanded the frame, forcing the audience to see the wider picture. That night had started as a celebration of two success stories. It ended as a defining moment in public discourse, a reminder that the American dream is real, but it doesn't wear the same face for everyone. Arnold walked onto that stage as the Terminator. He walked off as a student. The stage lights blazed down on a packed auditorium, their glow falling on Arnold Schwarzenegger, the 76-year-old former California governor, global action star, and living embodiment of the American dream. His massive frame filled the podium, the familiar Austrian accent slicing through the charged air. Over 2,000 people sat shoulder to shoulder, with hundreds more crammed into overflow rooms. Across from him, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, 42 years old, sharply dressed, and radiating controlled confidence, sat motionless, eyes locked on Arnold with the kind of unwavering focus that made even seasoned political operators uneasy. Everything about her posture, from the square set of her shoulders to the slight tilt of her head, suggested she was ready for battle. The evening had been billed as a conversation on American success, an exchange of perspectives from two wildly different backgrounds. Arnold's camp saw it as a perfect platform for him to once again showcase his personal story, the immigrant who arrived in America with $7 in his pocket and built an empire. But within minutes, the event took an entirely different turn. You think you can lecture us about America? Arnold's voice boomed, pointing toward Jasmine with the commanding presence that had once dominated movie theaters worldwide. I built my success from nothing, and I know what's wrong with this country. The moderator shifted uncomfortably. This was not how these events typically began. But Arnold was in his element, delivering the story he'd told countless times, the one that had won him movie roles, political office, and the admiration of millions. I didn't complain about the system, he declared. I didn't blame others. I worked harder than anyone else. I studied when others partied. I dreamed big and I made it happen. Applause rippled through sections of the crowd. Jasmine sat perfectly still. And now I look at Congress, Arnold continued. And I see people who've never built anything, never created jobs, never risked their own money, telling the rest of us how to live. So tell me, Congresswoman Crockett, what have you actually built? The room fell into a taut silence. Arnold's smile suggested he believed he had just landed the decisive blow. Jasmine's voice was calm. Governor Schwarzenegger, I've built something you can't buy with Hollywood money. Trust with the people I represent. Arnold chuckled, but the laugh had no warmth. Trust doesn't create jobs. Trust doesn't build hospitals or fund schools. Results do. And I've got results. He rose from his chair, towering over the stage. I govern the 5th largest economy in the world. I made tough choices. I didn't just talk about problems, I solved them. The audience split. Cheers from some, hushed anticipation from others. Jasmine didn't stand. She leaned toward her microphone. Governor, you're right. Results matter. So let's talk about results. Arnold's smile faltered. You made tough decisions, she continued. But do you ever think about the people those decisions affected? Did you ever have to choose between paying for your child's medicine or paying rent? Did you work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table? Did you explain to your kids why they couldn't have shoes for school? Arnold bristled. I understand people struggle. But the answer isn't handouts. The answer is to work harder. Dream bigger. Never give up. Jasmine paused, letting his words hang heavy. When she spoke again, her voice was steady, but sharp. When you came to America with $7, did you worry about being shot during a traffic stop because of your skin color? Did casting directors tell you that you looked too threatening for a leading role? Did bankers treat you like a criminal when you applied for loans? Did you have to teach your children how to keep their hands visible so they could make it home alive? The impact was immediate. Gasps. Murmurs. Stunned silence. You and I both believe in hard work, Jasmine said, her voice carrying to the farthest rows. But we've been playing by completely different rules. You didn't say everyone's journey was the same, but every time you tell your story as if it's universal, you imply it. Her voice sharpened. What have I built? I've built a career in a justice system not designed for people who look like me. I've built trust with communities failed for generations. I've built bridges between worlds you don't even know exist. Arnold's usual composure cracked. The man who had stared down monsters on screen now looked frozen in place. Governor, Jasmine said finally, you came to America and became the Terminator. I came into this world already having to terminate the assumption that I didn't belong here. The room went still. For the first time in perhaps his public life, Arnold Schwarzenegger was speechless. Within minutes, the clip exploded online. Hashtags like hashtag Terminator terminated, hashtag Jasmine knockout, and hashtag different rules trended worldwide. Memes, GIFs, and reaction videos flooded every platform. But unlike typical viral moments, this one struck deeper, capturing the exact second when privilege collided with perspective. The confrontation became global news. Progressives hailed Jasmine's clarity. Even some conservatives admitted privately that Arnold's narrative now felt incomplete. Across the country, families, classrooms, and workplaces were suddenly talking about privilege and systemic barriers in ways they hadn't before. Weeks later, Arnold broke his silence with a statement few expected. I'm proud of what I built. But Congresswoman Crockett is right. I never had to face certain fears that others live with daily. That doesn't make my success less real, but it does mean I have more to learn. He announced partnerships with civil rights groups to better understand those barriers. It wasn't defeat, it was growth. Political analysts, communications experts, and educators began studying the exchange as a masterclass in persuasion. Jasmine hadn't attacked Arnold's achievements. She had reframed the conversation, showing that the American dream is not one size fits all. The night had started as a showcase of 2 success stories. It ended as a lesson in humility, empathy, and the power of truth delivered with precision. Arnold had walked in as the Terminator. He left as a student.